This version of the Liebherr LTF 1060 is in the colours of Trost. And Trost is an Austrian crane hire company. It comes in a Liebherr branded box which shows a Scania cab, but this version of the model has an MAN cab. The box is factory sealed, so we've cut the tape and let's lift the lid and hope the model's the right way up. And no, today's not my lucky day, so we have to flip the box right the way round. And there we are, as if by magic, the model's the right way up and well wrapped. For the assembly, we'll just put this truck in a road-going configuration to start with, and this one can carry its own counterweight, which is loaded in the middle of the truck to balance the load on the tyres. Next we add on the lattice flyjib, which goes onto the side of the main boom, and with a little bit of care you can get it into the right position, and then you just have to pin it in place with one silver pin. This pin works well because it holds the flyjib in place even when you raise the boom. However, there is one omission on this MAN version of the model, and that's because there's nowhere to attach the hook during transport. So the Cranes etc. solution to this is just use a short length of chain which is attached to the suspension. Nope, you won't find that one in the Liebherr manual. As usual for WSI, the chassis is very good with excellent transmission and suspension. And the MAN truck cab is modelled well too. A particularly nice aspect of this model is the Trost graphics and colour scheme. And the wheels also look very good. The high detail continues through to the crane cab where there is Liebherr on the seat back. And there's an abundance of tiny sharp graphics, such as these warning signs on the outrigger beam. They're either very small or that finger is huge-normous. There are fixed ladders on the carrier deck and plenty of hydraulic hoses on the crane body. At the rear, the crane counterweight is made up of separate parts, all with sharp graphics. The boom detailing is very good with separate metal pulleys, although the thread used for the hoist rope is not the best. The add-on flyjib is a decent quality metal lattice. We will start with the crane parked in a somewhat unusual position by the Cranes etc. driver, but at least that lets us see that there's a fully sprung suspension on all of the wheels, and at the front there's linked steering which allows a moderate range of movement. With the crane thankfully in a normal position we can see that it rolls well in a straight line, and if we then set the steering it drives in a reasonable curve. After driving around the desk a couple of times, here comes the crane ready to be set up, and we'll start by pulling out the outriggers. These are interesting on this crane because they start by folding out, and that applies on both sets front and rear. Then to get some extra reach and give some more stability, they're also telescopic. Once they're extended out you can then wind down the outrigger pads, and it's good because you then see a smooth piston, and also included with the model are some plastic spreader plates. The pads are adjustable so they can be offset under the truck in transport mode, but for setting up you centre them and then you can install tiny steel pins to keep them centred. The outrigger beams are metal and they're strong enough to hold the model wheels free. We can now take our seat in the cab and get the crane operations started. And the main winch is operated by a giant remote control hand. With some of the hoist rope unwound, we can then disconnect the hook from its transport position, and then we switch on the hydraulics and begin to raise the boom. One thing to say about that on the review model was that the hydraulics are very stiff, but then it will hold any pose that you want to set. The next task is for the crane to swing round and pick up its own counterweight. And the model rotates well, and the scaling is also good because you can put the crane body right over the top of the parked counterweight. Once in position, the real crane would attach its own counterweight, so here we use some fingers to do the job. Just imagine how strong they are to lift up all that counterweight. Once it's attached, the crane can swing round and go to work. I mentioned that the hoist rope used on the model was not the best, but to try and give it some tension there's a supplied weight, and that attaches simply to the hook. The next feature we can look at is to telescope the boom, and each of the sections on the model pull out smoothly. It's also good to see that there are Trost graphics on the inside of the inner boom sections. The model has the standard method for locking the telescopic sections, so at maximum extension a small spring clip engages. Let's now look at some of the other features on the model, and that includes the tilting MAN cab, and underneath there's a detailed engine with different coloured components. Moving on to the crane cab, that's also got a couple of features. There's a walkway that can be pulled out underneath, And to make life easier for the operator working at height, the cab also tilts. The last feature to look at is attaching the metal fly jib. Once it's unpinned from its travelling position, we can move it round to the front, and there it's secured in position by two long steel pins. These can be a little bit fiddly to get in and line up properly, and you might need to clean out some of the paint from the holes. But once they are in, they make a strong connection. The next job is to open up the folding section and pin that in place. With the jib fully rigged, we then need to sort out the hoist rope, and there's an intermediate guide pulley which needs to be pulled up into position. Once you've done that, you can tie the hook on, but the hook supplied is not best for single line operation. So here is the fly jib up in the air, and you can adjust the offset angle by using the hydraulic cylinder. It is quite stiff and it will hold a pose. Fully opened up, the model is quite large, so let's see how large by carrying out a dim check. Firstly, to the top of the main boom, it's about 32 inches or 80 centimetres. And if you always wished you had something a few inches bigger, the fly jib adds another 13 inches or 33 centimetres. On now to the genuine imitation real life test. And here we'll try and see how much the crane can lift at a radius of about 20 centimetres. This is a 1 to 50 scale model, so our 20 centimetres scales up to be 10 metres on the real crane. Firstly, we'll try a load of about 350 grams on the hook. And if we multiply that by 50 times 50 times 50, we get an equivalent real load of about 4.4 tonnes. As you can see, with the equivalent of 4.4 tonnes on the hook, the crane is perfectly stable. Let's now run the test again, this time with 500 grams, and that scales up to a load of about 6.25 tonnes. Just a word of warning at this point that models aren't really designed to be tested like this, so if you do these tests, you do them at your own risk. Or to put it more simply, don't blame me if it all falls down in a heap. Anyway, here we have our 6.25 tonnes on the hook, and it's just at the point of tipping the crane over. Just for interest, the real crane can lift about 15 tonnes at this radius and height. In summary, this is another very nice looking version of the Liebherr LTF 1060 crane, and the colour scheme and detailing all make for a very attractive model. The only drawback on this model is the lack of the tying off point for the hook at the front of the MAN cab, but in all other respects the detail and features make this an outstanding crane model.